When you hear the word control in a business, what's the first thing that pops into your head? Probably top-down commands, right? Strict rules, keeping everything on a tight leash. But what if I told you that real strategic control, it's not about force at all. It's actually this delicate art, a kind of balancing act between totally opposite forces. So let's dive in and figure out how to master it.
And yeah, Robert Simons just hits the nail on the head here. That old playbook, the one where you just tell people what to do, it's officially broken. I mean, think about it. We live in a world that runs on innovation, on people taking initiative. And that old command and control model, it doesn't just fail to motivate. It literally kills the creativity that companies desperately need just to survive.
And that's exactly where this framework comes in. We're going to be diving into Simon's incredible book, Levers of Control. And what's so cool about it is that instead of some rigid, one-size-fits-all rulebook, he gives us this really sophisticated toolkit for managing strategy. It's a toolkit that actually embraces both freedom and focus at the same time.
All right, let's get right into it. The solution Simons offers is this powerful framework built around four, well, he calls them levers of control. And they're all distinct, but they're also totally interconnected. A good way to think about them is like four key dials a manager can turn to guide the whole company, to keep it on track, but also to let it explore new territory. Okay, so here's the whole framework in a single shot. You can see the four systems right there: beliefs, boundary, diagnostic, and interactive. And notice how they're all pointing towards that core business strategy in the middle. Now, here's the key insight, the thing you really got to get. Two of these levers are all about expanding opportunities, pushing outward. And the other two, they're about focusing attention, pulling inward. We're going to break down each and every one. All right, first up, let's talk about the expansive levers. These are the forces that create all that positive, forward-moving energy. This isn't about controlling people in that old-school sense. Nope, this is about inspiring them to get out there, find new opportunities, and really drive the whole organization forward. So, lever number one is what Simons calls the belief system. And honestly, this is the soul of the organization. And I'm not talking about some fluffy mission statement that just collects dust on a poster, okay? This is about the real core values that answer that huge question, why are we even here? Why do we exist? It's the company's moral compass, and it's what gives everyone permission to go hunt for opportunities that actually line up with that deeper purpose. And this is a perfect example of how a belief system works in the real world. This is Johnson & Johnson's famous credo. And look, it's not just some vague promise. It's a crystal clear list of who they're responsible to, in order, starting with patients, doctors, and nurses. So imagine you're an employee there and you have a really tough decision to make. You can literally look at this credo and know exactly how to prioritize. Now that is a belief system that has some serious power. Okay, now for the second expansive lever. And yeah, we're jumping ahead to lever number 4, but there's a good reason. It pairs so perfectly with the belief system. This is the interactive control system. And I gotta stress, this is not a piece of software. It's a process, a totally dynamic one. It's all about managers getting in the trenches, personally getting involved in those conversations about the biggest what-ifs the business is facing. It's how you spark new ideas from literally anywhere in the company. And this diagram of the emergent strategy process just captures it perfectly. It's this awesome feedback loop, right? You've got actions happening on the ground, which lead to new tactics. That sparks learning. And that learning can actually bubble all the way up and reshape the entire strategy. So what Simons is really getting at is that these interactive systems are the engine that lets a company evolve from the bottom up. It's not just about orders coming from the top down. Okay, so we've got these incredible, expansive, inspiring forces. But let's be real. Inspiration without focus, that just turns into chaos pretty fast. And that's exactly why we need the other two levers. These are the constraining forces. They're the ones that provide discipline, manage risk, and make sure we're focusing our attention on what really matters. This brings us to lever number 2, boundary systems. And the crucial point here, and this is so important, is that boundaries aren't meant to kill creativity. They're meant to channel it. They basically define the playing field. They're telling employees, hey, go, create, explore, be amazing, but here are the lines you absolutely cannot cross. And by making those risks crystal clear, you actually empower people to take more initiative inside those safe boundaries. I mean, to really get this, just think about one of the oldest boundary systems in history, the 10 Commandments. They're super simple, right? Direct, non-negotiable thou shalt nots. They don't waste time telling you everything you should do. They just clearly define what is absolutely off limits. And that leaves this huge, vast space for everything that's acceptable.
And here you can see the modern corporate version of that. It's a simple little checklist from the company Equinor, and it helps their employees navigate the really tricky ethics of, say, accepting gifts or hospitality. By just running through these clear questions, an employee knows instantly if they're about to step out of bounds. It's so simple, but it's an effective boundary that protects not just the company, but the individual too.
Okay, that brings us to our final lever, number 3, the Diagnostic Control System. So think about it this way. If the boundary systems are the fences on the playing field, then the diagnostic systems are the scoreboard and the stat sheet. These are the tools you're probably already familiar with, things like budgets, project plans, KPIs. They monitor all those critical performance metrics. And the key is, they work by exception. They're designed to be quiet until something goes off track, and then they alert the manager.
The airplane cockpit is just the perfect metaphor for this. A pilot isn't constantly climbing out on the wing to check every single bolt on the engine, right? Of course not. They trust the gauges on their dashboard to tell them if something needs their attention. And it's the exact same for a manager. You use these diagnostic tools to make sure the strategic plan is on course, and that frees up your brain power to actually fly the plane instead of micromanaging the engine.
Okay, now we get to the most important part of this whole thing. Because these 4 levers, they are not meant to be used in isolation. The real genius of Simon's framework is seeing how they all work together, how they create this dynamic tension. And that tension is the very heart of an effective strategy.
So let's go back to our master map here. Look at it again. On one side, you've got the beliefs and interactive systems. Those are your forces of expansion. Then on the other side, you've got the boundary and diagnostic systems, your forces of focus. A successful strategy needs both. It's not a choice. You have to be able to push outwards and pull inwards at the exact same time. Because think about it. If you lean too far into focus, you just become a slow, rigid bureaucracy. But if you lean too far into expansion, you get total creative chaos.
You know, a really powerful way to think about this tension is through the ancient concept of yin and yang. Your beliefs and interactive systems, that's the yang. It's the positive, the inspiring, the expansive energy. It's like warmth and light. And then your boundary and diagnostic systems, that's the yin. That's the constraining, the focusing, the disciplined energy, the darkness and cold. You just can't have one without the other.
And this really brings us to the ultimate point of it all, management. It isn't about choosing freedom over control or inspiration over discipline. That's a false choice. True strategic mastery is about holding these two opposite forces in a constant, dynamic balance. The goal isn't to find some static, perfect middle ground and just sit there. No way. The goal is a continuous, active adjustment. The real art is in the balance.
So this whole thing leaves us with a really powerful question to take back to our own jobs. It's not just about what you can do by yourself. It's about asking, how can I consciously use all 4 of these levers, the beliefs, the boundaries, the interactive conversations, and the diagnostic metrics, to get everyone around me, my whole team, engaged in that same critical mission, making our organization truly deeply unique.